All right. The cancel queen is maybe getting canceled. We don't know. That's the headline that I'm reading. And it's going back to this clip from Piers Morgan, where Taylor Lorenz, the former Washington Post reporter, Bill and I just talked about how she's leaving the Washington Post. She's going to go fully independent. Last week, we said she wants to be just like me and Bill. And is this going to affect her ability? I don't know. This may make her even more popular with her audience. Essentially, they have this panel discussion about the UnitedHealthcare CEO's murder, and this is what Taylor Lorenz says.
Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left where, you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that he's murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
Well, why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the
You seem to find the whole thing hilarious.
Okay, we're going to show another clip where he actually uses the F word on his show about her laughing. And while I cue that up, Bill, would you please give us your opening comments here?
Okay, well, first and foremost, I don't know Taylor Lorenz, her podcast. It was actually, she had a deal with Vox.
And they leave behind two young boys, especially during...
There we go.
Sorry, Bill. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I still had it queued up with the audio. Okay, keep going.
Restrained on the subway, tragically died.
Well, I'm hearing Pierce in my ear. Okay, okay. There it goes. Okay, she had a distribution deal with Vox. Now, after she made the initial controversial tweet about, this is why we're happy to see healthcare executives be killed, Vox pulled out of the deal. They said, we're not going to have you. If you are uber liberal left wing Taylor Lorenz and you've offended Vox to pull out of a distribution deal of your podcast, that you've done something. So my hat's off to you on that one. Now let's go back to what she said and the joy thing. She tried to walk it back almost immediately because she knows she screwed up. But by then the horse has left the barn, cowboy. Now, I mean,
well, and can I just address real fast, because I do have the article brought up about the whole Vox thing. She's saying that they don't own her show. She was never fired, never terminated, that everybody was getting this whole thing wrong. I tend to believe what she's saying, that somehow we're misunderstanding the relationship she has with Vox.
It was just a distribution deal. It's like if Joe Rogan said something so bad that Spotify said, okay, we're getting out of our deal. The Joe Rogan podcast is still going to go on. It's his show. It's
I see.
It's a distribution deal.
Yeah. And I don't know what kind of money she was bringing in or not. According to someone else in that article, this was a done thing before her comments over the UnitedHealthcare CEO. But I don't know. I mean, I'll say a little bit more about this later, but I kind of feel like maybe she's trying to go even more unleash Taylor because she's going independent. So it's like she feels like she has to be even more edgy. Mm-hmm. And that's where some of this might be coming from, because I'm going to show you a clip where Robbie Suave from The Hill basically says, look, if I was happy that somebody else was murdered, I would shut the F up and just not say anything. And everyone, I finally agree with Robbie, because that's exactly how I feel too.
Yeah.
Keep your mouth shut. All right, watch this part where Piers goes after her.
Conversation about healthcare in this country, that's fine. Let's have that all day long. But to be joyful, or even to say you're not empathetic about somebody losing their life when they leave behind 2 young boys, especially during the holiday season, the same day that millions of New Yorkers are celebrating a tree lighting. I mean, that's just too far for me, a bridge too far. The loving and tolerant left is at it again, Piers.
Yeah, Taylor, I don't mean to be rude, but why the fuck are you laughing all the time? I don't get it. Sorry,
I'm
apologies for my
because
language, but honestly, I find it unbelievable. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at Tommy's insane mischaracterization of why people are angry. It has nothing to do with Occupy Wall Street. This is a feeling that people feel across the left and the right. You mentioned Ben Shapiro earlier in his video about the healthcare exec. I encourage people to check the comment section on that video, okay? 100% of America is united on this, or rather the majority of America is united on this.
Okay, I'm going to show you an article that a doctor wrote to show that Taylor, in a way, she is kind of right, that there is a lot of seething anger that is coming out from people
she's all the way correct. And it's not just liberals who have had this mindset. There have been many conservative voices that they have the Chris Rock approach. I understand, you just don't do it. Okay. So she's all the way correct about this. And it's sad that somebody has lost their life, and it's sad that it had to come to this for somebody to make a point and get across. Okay, now it's time to really start having discussions about healthcare reform in the United States. But she is right. There are people from all walks of life across the spectrum in the United States that would go, at worst, we're celebrating this guy was killed, or at least they were like, okay, it's bad, but you just don't do that. Okay, I understand why he did it. You just don't do it. So she's all the way right.
Okay, we're going to talk about how this may affect her independent journalism, and then I will show you that doctor article that I found very interesting. We are getting very close to Christmas. If you've not gotten your orders in for Allison Wine promo, it is time to do it. Do not wait. You will get 6 bottles of the wine that was chosen for stuff I personally like, which I'm going to guess is very similar to what you would also like. Hand-harvested grapes, vineyards between 6,000 and 9,000 feet in extremely remote parts of the world where there are very few pesticides used. The family vineyards that produce these wines, in some cases, have been around over 200 years. So you're supporting small businesses. They're just amazing limited edition wines that you will not get anywhere else, really. I mean, in most of the cases, this one guy named Diego goes to these little vineyards. He hand selects like a few hundred bottles. They come to Bonner Wine and they become part of Allison's Wine Club. So go get them. You'll have a gift for the holidays. You'll have a gift for people who have post-holiday blues. You know, you could show up to their January 17th. I don't know, whatever holiday that is. Like, everything's over. I'm sad. It's gray outside and rainy and cold. Unless you live in Florida, in which case, come visit us. It'll be awesome. You can bring a bottle of wine. Tell them it's a free speech gift. It supports the show. It's anti-censorship wine. And also, it's wine that's made the old-fashioned way. Natural fermentation, no artificial dyes and flavors and stuff like that. AllisonWinePromo.com. All right. As Bill was mentioning before, there is talk online about Taylor fired over remarks about UnitedHealthcare CEO. I think you're right. We're getting maybe lost in the weeds a little bit about she wasn't fired, but there may have been the deal was lost. Okay, so she's saying, I wasn't fired. You guys are idiots. The guy who wrote this article is a hack, blah, blah, blah. But she doesn't really address that it happened, that something did happen. This deal did seem to fall apart. And I don't know. I mean, Bill, what do you think was the cause of it?
I fully believe it was her remarks regarding this whole situation. And I think she is going to learn real quick that it's not anywhere near as easy to make it as independent journalist. And obviously you and I are journalists, but I guess you could say she's a journalist, but it's a lot harder these days to do it independently because that is becoming a very, very scarce entity. And that's a conversation for another time. But she's going to get a rude awakening really fast and probably looking for another job before the end of next year.
She writes in news. Well, she doesn't write in Newsweek. They quote her, but she wrote this. This is false, and Vox doesn't own or distribute my YouTube podcast. So she's saying they don't distribute it. She says, I do. Literally begging any of these idiots to understand how the internet works. My show is not a Vox show. There's no deal that has been ended. Max Tanny is a hack.
Okay. So then where did this come from? Did somebody just make it up that, something Vox, just pulled the deal or, ended their partnership or anything? So
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think this was, brought up out of thin air. I mean, nobody cares that much about Taylor Lorenz that they're going to make up stories like this.
Yeah. Well, all right. While we're chewing on that one, let me show you this. This is pretty funny. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the Hills Rising, which like I keep looking at their set thinking something is telling me here that they're not making the money they used to on the Hill on Rising. But anyway, and that's not the days of the Kim Iverson or
even when Sagar and Crystal Ball were back on there.
Yeah, Sagar and Crystal Ball. Okay, here's what he says. Okay.
She wasn't accused of being joyful. She said she felt joy. And then when Piers Morgan challenged her, she walked it back to, well, I don't feel empathy for it. I think, honestly, if someone got killed and I secretly felt joyful about it, I would just shut the F up. I would just not say anything. I would know that is a shameful way to feel about someone dying. And you should just not, if you have something really that unpleasant to say, you should probably just not express it. And it is fine to criticize the healthcare industry and whatever this person's role in it was, although there was joy being felt before there was any time to process, well, what is this person's exact involvement and what is exactly their company doing? The joy was automatic. And I think not an encouraging tendency for people engaging in it.
All right, Bill, what do you think about Robbie?
I think everybody's right on Tittle Tattle this morning. I mean, maybe we need to be doing the shows in the mornings. So, but again, Robbie's right. It's the old adage. Our mother if we have a mother, then we've been told, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. Okay. We've all been told that, especially in 2024, where everybody is on this or doing this or has a camera stuck in their face and is on Twitter or X or whatever. Just don't say anything, because now the backlash is so there. And maybe you're right. Maybe she's just doing it to, seem a little more uncensored, or Taylor Lorenz after dark, or whatever you want to call her. But Robbie's 100% right. If you don't want this kind of backlash, especially with this kind of tragedy, then just don't say anything. Just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I think, this article I got in my email, I was able to read earlier, but now all of a sudden it's telling me I have to sign up and everything. I'm not going to do that during the show. No. I think I actually have signed up for MedPage Today, believe it or not, because I like to track their articles during COVID, which were all big pharma articles, which is what fascinates me, frankly, about all of this, because the last few years, obviously, there have been some of us who have been very critical of the pharmaceutical, hospital, healthcare industry. We have suffered financially for that. We've lost our jobs. We have been demonetized on these platforms and suspended and everything. And that was at a time where a lot of these people who are now expressing such joy at the murder of somebody who ran one of these companies were very silent about the problems that we have in the United States with pharmaceutical companies or these health insurance companies dictating what you have to do with your medical decisions in order to maintain your employment or whatever else. So I am a little confused, where were all of you guys if you were so concerned? I mean, these companies were, everybody, people like Taylor Lorenz, a lot of that crew, they were encouraging and cheering on and actually publicly criticizing and frankly, even calling conspiracy theorists, folks who were questioning the decisions that were made over the last few years and related to this, big money healthcare system that we have in the United States, which overlooks actual scientific debate or personal freedom to decide I don't want to do what my employers make me do with this experimental injection that we've had. And so they were just totally silent while this was happening. And now all of a sudden everybody's excited when this guy's gunned down in the street. So that's the first thing I want to say. Like, this was written by a doctor. Like I said, it says, "I am torn, grappling with the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO. I detest everything Thompson stood for, yet I am troubled by thoughts of hate." Okay, I'm going to go out here and just, like, this is me. This is total opinion here. I can't say that for sure MedPage today wouldn't have run something very critical of the COVID vaccine, but I will just say this: they ran major propaganda for the COVID vaccine over the last few years, and I doubt they would let somebody write something very seriously critical about it to show the other side, but they'll let somebody put this, like, talking about how much, I've got all this hate and I'm kind of happy that this guy died. And I'm like, wow, it's really interesting where these medical journals or medical newspapers will allow you to, like, question the system. Like, you're allowed to question the system here, but over the last few years you couldn't question the system. Anybody who questioned the system was a conspiracy theorist. That confused me. And then this is my final thought. I hand it over to Bill. I do think we have a real problem with believing that we have nothing wrong with us. That we haven't ever done anything that would, like, deserve the wrath of God, and that only the guy who runs the United Healthcare organization has any evil in his heart or has ever done anything evil. And I think that is really demonic, because it pulls people away from looking internally at their own problems and how, we all have participated in evil and how much we all need the grace of God and the love that only God has that he can give us. As we're coming up on Christmas, Jesus was born, Constantine technically made this Christmas because he wanted to have the same holiday, but we're not going to get into that right now. Anyway, we don't really know when Jesus was born. Okay. But that said, we're talking about all this and like Tommy Lahren, she's like, it's everybody celebrating the New York Christmas tree lighting ceremony. It's like, who cares? I mean,
exactly.
It's like, at the same time, millions of New Yorkers are celebrating the tree lighting. Like, okay, I really don't care about that. But anyway, my point is just to say that it might seem easy to cheer on evil being, poof, gone, executed or whatever in front of you, because you're like, that guy was evil. But I assure you that that the same evil that may have been in that guy's heart is in your heart too. And that if you live your life thinking, like, cheering on the pain and suffering of others because you think they deserve it and you don't, I have a really tough message. You do. You probably do. We all do. We all have that same spiritual evil in our heart, and we all need the grace of God. And I think this, to me, has just shown, wow, so many of us really still think that we are better than other people. And it's easy to look at a guy like this and say that that he's somehow in, like, the drudgery that I would never be a part of. But I've said this many times before. Like, one of the things that I think changed my mind when I was a journalist in the news business was realizing, interviewing people that, like, actual murderers, poachers, people were going out and, killing animals illegally and torturing them and stuff like that, is it possible that if I was in their shoes, like, I grew up like them, I had their same parents, their same education or lack thereof, could I have ended up like them? Is it possible I could have made the decision they made? But by the grace of God, here I am in a different life with different parents, with different life. I mean, yes, it's of course possible. So from a spiritual standpoint, to cheer on pain and suffering in other people as if you have no evil, like you've never done anything. I think that's a real time for reflection. I think that's the last thing I'm going to say, Bill. It's a time for reflection.
Yeah.
Even if I totally agree with the fact that our healthcare system sucks, and I'll be the first person to say that. I lost when we had our health insurance through my last job, which I got fired for over my podcast. So, like, we've had, a real issue with that. And I think the way the system is, and I'm not a fan of our current, the way that our current pharmaceutical companies and health insurance companies are in bed with each other and with the government. But that said, I think this is a reflection of a real spiritual problem in the United States. Bill, what do you want to say?
Two quick things before we wrap it up. Taylor Lorenz my big problem with this whole thing, obviously what she said, I disagree with, but where was she when Andrew Cuomo, the biggest mass murderer in American history, forced all the senior citizens and end up killing 14, 15,000 people, shoving them into nursing homes during COVID. Okay. Where was Taylor Lorenz then? Where was her outrage? Where was her celebrating that Cuomo was ousted? Not because of his policies that ended up killing 14,000 senior citizens in New York, but he was ousted because of a sexual harassment claim. So where was her outrage then? Okay. So that's number one. And I got off on that tangent. I already forgot number two.
No big deal. Over on Rumble real fast. Rage. LOL. Taylor never profited from the suffering of others.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's a very, very, very good point.
Okay. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, come on, man. And then she might say, but not the same. It's not the same level. I just believe in God's eyes, it's all the same. All right. P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida 34432. You can send me some mail. Also, go get your cod liver oil, fermented cod liver oil. You're going to be eating a lot of pie or whatever it is you eat for Christmas, and you want to avoid getting cavities. Get your fermented cod liver oil, concentrated butter oil blend. That's what we've been taking for the last decade in our family, and it helped me as somebody who used to get cavities all the time, terrible dental health. Really helped me with regenerating my my teeth. I mean, and so I would go from having 1 or 2 cavities diagnosed every time I went to the dentist to none. Go get it, greenpasture.org, promo code Allison, 1L Allison at checkout, and you get 10% off. You can support on Locals, AllisonMarrow.locals.com, where we usually do this show just for supporters at the end, but today we're just going to wrap it up because we're both kind of in a time crunch. But Bill has a podcast on Thursday nights on Rumble. Bill, the SARB podcast. What do you guys have coming up tomorrow?
Well, I don't want to talk about that just yet because we haven't had our production meeting. I think we're going to do some follow-up stuff with this UnitedHealthcare murder. But I do want to say, if you go back on Rumble right now and look at the Smokes and Road Beers podcast, by far and away, our biggest and most watched episode ever was last week when we had on Allison's amazing, awesome husband, Lynn, joined us for the show to break down the video of the shooting. It's by far and away our most watched video. We want to thank everybody who tuned in to that and continues to watch it. It's still gaining traction, and I'm just amazed. I think Facebook has throttled our video because we do show the actual leaked footage of the shooting itself. So I think Facebook has throttled it, but Rumble, it is thriving and it's blowing up on our numbers. So by our numbers. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow at 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern, Rumble and Facebook, the Smokes and Road Beers podcast.
Okay, great. And thank you, everybody who's on Locals, AllisonMarrow.locals.com. I'm just going to show one last quick thing. Yes, Ann Walter says of Bill's last show that he was talking about where my husband Lynn was on, it was a great show. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill, for always showing up. Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you next time.
See you guys.